Alrighty, good evening, everybody. I hope you're doing well. I don't know about you guys, but I am super hyped for this race. SpaceNarc versus MiniSebrango. Two runners that are seated next to each other, two runners with a very close PB. It's basically anyone's game. This is the ideal circumstance for a Cyber Shadow race. So joining me today on commentary, I'm going to have Turkey with us, so we're going to get things rolling here in 1 second. Alrighty, Turkey, how you doing this evening?
Not too bad, not too bad. Just hoping Discord doesn't Discord on me at the moment. I'm having a bit of a technical error with it, but hopefully it will hold together and we'll be able to get through this, no problem. Hope you're doing well yourself, sir. And I guess we're going to be cracking on with another Cyber Shadow run. Round 2, SpaceNarc versus MiniSebrango. So, promises to be a close one. I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just going to drop out of the race room here, so we are going to get our two runners on the go, but... yeah, we essentially mentioned already that this is set to be an intense race any way that you slice it. Stacking up the PBs, stacking up the seeds of the runners, however you want to look at it, it's set to be a good one.
Indeed, on that front, both of them have been PBing rather recently. I believe Narc is somewhere in the mid to high 58. Sebrango recently PB'd in the mid 57 range. So based off of that, Sebrango may have a little bit of an edge there, but they are both quite recent, so in the form of consistency, both seem to be performing at least a high level, so and probably pretty much within each other's range. So, as measured, should be a good race going forward. As we're off and ready, just getting through a little training hall here. Just make sure you know how to jump, how to slice, how to kick off floors. Fun little technique using the early part, mainly in the front half. This run is essentially a game of two halves. Being able to save just a couple of frames with each kick that you successfully do. Doesn't sound like much, but over the course of the run, it does add up to at least a couple of seconds. 3 time saves, why not?
Yeah, and I mean, there's really, as you mentioned, there's free ledges that our runners can do that on. They can do it basically any ledge that they're already continuing in that direction, and there's no real consequence. You'll probably see them cut down on attempts. It's pretty easy to go for in the first stage, but once you start getting deeper into the run, you're definitely going to see that taper off in lieu of other faster things that we can do.
Definitely on that front, today we are in chapter 1. So as we mentioned, the game of two halves. Front half is mostly technical platforming-esque, and a couple of other tropes that are generally used: damage boosting, cycle-based techniques. The works essentially put. And I've brain freezed. Christ. Apparently my brain hasn't woke up yet. Bear with me.
That's okay. So you're going to see our runners basically going through this section. It's going to be pretty much a game of cycles for Chapter 1. You're going to have platform cycles, whether they be rotating platforms, these little propeller platforms. You're going to see more of them later in the stage. So the whole idea is they're going to be trying to optimize the cycles. I'm going to guess both of our runners are likely playing at 60 FPS, meaning that they'll be going for ledge clips, but we'll see shortly. But yeah, the next few rooms are all going to be make the cycle as best you can, and that's the name of the game. Oh, and I guess we got Smasher. I always forget that we have Smasher. It's so short-lived.
It is very true. One of the bosses within the run, we know is a mid-stage boss, going to be coming up momentarily for both runners. So Smasher is relatively straightforward. The main thing you need to know is just do not stay under that crusher. That's an instant death if that seems to happen. So short hops, slashes, and just staying in close, getting as much as they can. Optimally, you'd leave him on about 5 points of damage. But with exception of that, as long as you get him within 2 rounds, you're pretty much on pace. Both have executed perfectly well on both sides, and near enough in sync. And I believe Sebrango, well, at least from what I can see, Sebrango looks like he's slightly ahead at this point, but there could be some syncing maybe, or maybe it's just he's a little bit ahead. But pretty much nothing in it. As you'll see as the run goes on, the difficulty of this run is quite a thing, and deaths more than likely will happen or can happen, and each death can cost a good amount of time. So the run could easily flip back and forth. As we mentioned, cycle-based stuff, both runners hitting first cycle here. This is one of the bigger cycle rooms actually in the run. 3 cycles that you're aiming to hit, both of them hitting the first 2 cycles. That gives them the opportunity to go for cycle 3. This one is a little bit more dangerous. They're going to be taking a tank hit and trying to turn in motion. By doing that successfully, they'll be able to get onto the top platform. Nicely done on Narc's side. I think Sebrango may have opted out on that. I don't blame him. It is risky because if you time it just slightly off and you don't turn in time, there's a good possibility you'll fall into the gap at the floor, and that's a death right there.
Yeah, it's really a risk versus reward situation there. You know, how much do you want to risk saving those couple seconds versus being sent back to your last checkpoint? And in a race and tournament scenario, it's an easy one to opt out of, and I can totally respect the choice.
Definitely on that front. That will give Narc just a slight advantage going into the end of Chapter 1, having that slight little lead, probably 2 to 3 seconds at the most, as they'll enter Stage 1 boss, Operator. So you'll know there'll be kind of a common thing with a couple of the first set of bosses. The idea is you want to stay in close at least, but you don't want to be too close to him. The idea is to be close enough, but not too close so you can avoid the first projectile. Tanking or moving forward on the second projectile is perfectly fine. Stay in close again to keep your swipes in motion, to essentially take them down in what we know as 1 round. Narc got a little caught there and had a little issue just trying to snip the toenails. If he does stay in the air, snipping the toenails is a very tight maneuver to catch off. So, in respect, still a decent fight. I believe Sebrango did get the 1 rounder, so that's going to flip. We're going to flip it back over. He's going to take the advantage now going into Chapter 2. So, exciting stuff. We're already going back and forth straight away. And if this is just Chapter 1, what's the rest going to entail, I wonder?
I'm going to be riding the faders all match. That's all I can say.
Well, as long as none of us curse them, this should be good. So into Chapter 2, a bit more cycle-based stuff, and as Shiza usually mentions here, welcome to Trash.
Yeah.
It pretty much is a trash stage, quite literally and figuratively. Well, it's not trash in that sense, I guess. I guess I'm just over-exaggerating for a laugh, but this chapter can get a bit finicky. One of the big pet peeves and hatreds for amongst the community is these rust flies. They could kind of just keep sniping around about and be a complete pain in the backside. Both runners did opt to grab the SP upgrade there. It's only 1 extra SP for the course of the run, but as the later portions progress, that 1 little extra, it may not necessarily save the time that you spend, but it will give you more comfort with how you operate your SP management. So it's really not much of a sacrifice to go for as they enter Bug Room. A little bit of RNG with the big bug here could take anywhere from 3 to 5 strikes, and well, if you don't like rust flies, there's a lot of them, because as you hit him, he spews out a lot.
Yeah, Mini was just getting a little bit, I guess, apprehensive and trying to get up there as soon as possible. I mean, you definitely want to get that damage in ASAP. The problem is, the second you jump, that bug is going upwards, and just prematurely trying to get that damage in, and unfortunately had a few extra jumps in there, but we are basically... never mind. We are not. I didn't get the words out. We are not.
It's not his fault. It looks like he's having a little bit of catch-up there with the laser, unfortunately, missing out on that laser cycle and getting a little bit caught up now. In the meantime, Narc has progressed onto this mid-stage boss, Laser Brain. He does have a weakness, one of the only bosses that actually has a weakness in the center of its of the big brain part, which does double damage. Nicely executed there, opting to take a slightly slower method, but a slightly more consistent and safer method in terms of keeping damage high and prosper. But so I guess through nicely on Narc's side, he progressed on to the second half of the of Chapter 2. Sebrango getting through now, and going to be making his way into Laser Brain himself.
And we're in for the resident sleeper, the fly elevator. Absolutely nobody's favorite section of the game. Sorry, Mecha.
This is one of the first auto-scrollers of the run. The good thing with me, as far as I can say, is we usually have to deal with the hard one. There are a couple of differences between the console versions currently and the PC version. We're still awaiting update 1.04. which is expected to pass for both versions, so we'll be all up to date and matching. But the elevator, in terms of the console, will have a couple more enemies, a couple more rust flies laying around. Really doesn't change too much in terms of the elevator, thankfully, but it's just one of them we can at least say, we got the harder order score, and we don't really get the cross for that because it really doesn't do anything, but still. Oh, Turkey's had his rant. I'm all good now. Let's go. Alright, so elevator done for Narc right now, and he'll be going off for this room, another cycle room within this. The main cycle is literally right at the end. Hopefully get through to meet what's known as the trash elevator. It's a bunch of trash that starts to progressively go up, but that cycle begins the moment you enter the screen. So opting to just try and get forward as quick as you can in order to meet the cycle, and he's going to be looking good, and that'll do Narc nicely.
Yeah, he was well ahead of that. He actually even paused for a second there to wait for the laser to destroy the one extra block. So he had a very, very good room overall.
Yeah, and he has the scrambler. And once again, he's going to stay in close, but a little different property though. Unlike Evaporator, where it's mainly to score just the high damage purposely, in this circumstance, it's simply to keep him on a specific cycle. If you end up giving yourself too much distance between the two, his patterning will start to change, and that can start to become a little more unpredictable. But as long as you stay pretty much right up with him, he's always going to do the exact same attacks and same patterns every single time you approach the fight. So, with that being said, nicely done on Narc's side. Sebrango having no problem with the trash elevator himself, as he will get his meet up with the scrambler in a sec.
I don't know about you, but I mean, it obviously is not great when it happens to you, but my favorite scrambler troll is when he lands on one of the bricks of trash, like after he jumps out of the suit, and it just throws you right off because you're so used to him just going from side to side and landing right beside you, and it like changes the trajectory of the shot. Probably like a rite of passage that's probably happened to everybody at least once. If not, you're lucky.
Yay, I'm lucky. Because I was going to say, that's one of the things I've not actually experienced yet. But I can believe it to be the case. If the trash happens to be there, it's a possibility. So thankfully, I've not had to concern myself with that, as we are now in Chapter 3. Narc's already made his progression. Get gems are going. Music is definitely awesome in this game. So Chapter 3 kind of puts a bit more over to the test. Chapter 1 just gets you warmed up. Chapter 2 puts a couple of hellacious things around. Chapter 3 picks it up even more, putting a number of things to test, both from the casual side and even from the speedrun tech. So a number of the speedrun tech that they've been using, there's going to be even more of that pretty much that's scattered throughout the course of this run, from your tank damaging, ledge boosting, and more primarily on at least the 60 hertz runs, or 60 frames per second runners, the ledge grabbing. It's a good example here for SpaceNarc, getting both of those ledge grabs in there. It's going to save him a couple of seconds. Nicely done. In the meantime, Sebrango dealing with the with Tank Central, not because of the tank style of enemies, because this is one of the main rooms where you just tank a lot of damage. That's simply on the premise of, well, it's just much quicker than slashing them like 6, 7, 8 times to destroy them. So that'll do him nicely. Although I do think Sebrango is running the 144 version. I'm not 100% on that, but if he is, he won't be able to do those ledge grabs that Narc is able to do. However, he does get a slight advantage on his sword offense. Sword/speed ends up being slightly faster, so in terms of certain boss cycles, it'll just make him a little more comfortable for Sebrango to execute.
That really explains why we saw the difference in the stage 1 boss there, where Sebrango had a little bit of an edge and was able to edge that boss out a little bit quicker. Narc actually took a little fall into the pit there, but thankfully it was right after the checkpoint, so it wasn't hugely impactful, but gave Sebrango a little bit of time to make up for that stage 2.
Indeed, and as we mentioned about this run, we'll say throughout that it picks up even more pace, but literally from the get-go, it's just hard. It's a very challenging run. It harks back onto the old school gaming of the 80s and the 90s, with a lot of the old school difficulty games. I always mention Ninja Gaiden. I've done in near enough every race now. It's probably one of the best examples of one of the classic hard games that are made. But there are some modern aesthetics to this. No life system and more checkpoints for sure. But it doesn't make it any more easier. It just means as long as you plug on, you will get through eventually, as we deal with Stage 3's mid-boss, Hunter Tank, as I now finally remember its name. So you've got the core at the top of the ceiling, and we want to take that out to open the primary core in the center. slash the hell out of that, and it goes down very nicely. Other bit of tech that they use there is pretty much just slashing the turrets on the ground. This knocks them back into the ground so that it gives less projectiles flowing across the screen that could potentially juggle you and even take you down. So knock through with it nicely, and Sebrango's attempt now to deal with the old hunter tank. Leading out with the ceiling core, taking on the turrets to the floor, just knocking them down just to give less projectiling on the screen. And focus on the core, nicely done.
I found, like, for me, like, stage 3 was probably... It felt very high execution and very dangerous, like, especially with the lasers, and it's very easy to get off cycle, so, like, when you're just learning the game and just picking up, I feel like stage 3 is kind of one of those initial little hurdles that you come across. Once you get over your natural hate for stage 2 and what can happen, that will come back, though, from my experience. But yeah, stage 3, I feel like, goes from a stage that's very learning oriented when you're just getting going with the game to a little more comfortable after you've kind of established yourself and you've got, you know, you've found your legs, if you will.
In general, that is pretty much spot on there. It is a little more relaxing, I'd say, in comparison to the likes of Chapter 2, but there is much more going on in a general sense. So, yeah, it's pretty much one of the initial hurdles, and I can agree with that. Funny enough, I must say, when I first started doing this game, I found Chapter 3 I got the consistency of that relatively alright, until I started getting better at Chapters 1 and 2, and then Chapter 3 just sort of went a bit weird on me. But
It's like a sleeper. Yeah. Like you sleep on it because you spend so much time trying to make the cycles in 1 and trying to deal with the trash and all the things that go wrong in 2, that when you finally get to 3, you feel like you can breathe, and it goes south.
Very, very true there. Right, Narc is actually a stage 3 boss Biohunter, picking up the Swag Blade, something you can purchase with your essence, which is the game's version of the currency. It's a nice little sub-weapon used mainly phase 1 of Biohunter, because he spends most of it in the air. So you pretty much just want that to pretty much rip his health down as quick as you can. It did look like for the fight, Narc did have a little bit of an issue, at least with phase 2, probably mainly because he probably didn't get quite enough or as much damage as he would have liked in phase 1. But still didn't have any real issue. He didn't get taken out or anything like that, so he's in a good spot there. Sebrango taking out phase 1 as well. Now, it looks like he at least got a decent amount of damage there, so he should have a good opportunity to go for a central kill.
Very nice.
And using Rising Fire to his advantage. Nice. So, get ribbed, Mr. Biohunter. But we're not quite done with Swag Blade. Like Swag Blade, for at least 1 or 2 more instances, it finds some good use. Starting off here in Narc's side, pretty much just manipulating the blade in a certain way so it reaches its height, because it wants to hit that bomb there, because that's the exit from when they are done with this next little bit. This saves about 3 seconds, maybe 4 seconds, saving hitting the bomb when you're on your way out and then just having to stand there waiting around. So the bomb is out of the way. Unfortunately, that means you need to then carry it into our first little dojo section here. These kind of things test your strength and your wills. And in this case, you're racing a giant monkey vertical to the top of the stage. Swag Blade can get in your way here a little bit. You mainly want to be able to manipulate it in such a fashion that you do not have to worry about it smashing the crates themselves, because they're the primary things you want to use to be able to climb up quicker. Narc having no issue whatsoever there, and gets through cleanly. Sebrango pretty much right behind him, just a section behind. A bit of fire swing going on. I think that's what he calls it.
Yeah, again, you know, this is one of those small differences that it's like, we are a monkey dojo apart right now, but at the end of the day, anything can change in any short amount of time. So, like, we're going to get on to the next chapter. You're going to see a lot more instant death spikes, basically.
Yeah, and this is where I feel personally where the first 3 chapters really get you warmed up for, because this is where we go from our initial gears to the next level. Essentially, this is where I feel as though it truly steps up into the next level of difficulty. There's going to be more annoying and frustrating enemies that are just going to be planted around the field. They're going to hit harder, and there's going to be certain cycles that they're going to try and meet that are going to look as scary as all hell. But first, they need to get the door open. So off we go. Pretty much mainly just trying to snipe the switches. Narc did have a little issue with the first switch, no problems with the second. So that'll keep him going forward nicely as he'll be able to enter the main aspects of Chapter 4. Oh. And there we go. Nice snipe on Sebrango's side. Gets the first switch, looking to get his second. And there's Narc for using the swag blade there just to get that bit down a little bit quicker. This is usually the point where the swag blade is had its primary uses in a speedrun. Well, most runners generally take that as the final part with the swag blade. If anyone wants to take it on further and test even further, it could be a nice little thing. But swag blade has a habit of trolling you sometimes, so you do have to be careful.
I remember before we discovered the upcoming trick with the first security section that you'll see shortly. I was originally theorizing, would it be possible to take swag blade all the way there and then hit the big switch above you that we initially thought we had to hit to do the cyber section. And then it just turns out, well, you just don't really have to actually do the cyber section because you can just enter, hit the first switch and leave. But it all kind of became a moot point.
So nice train of thought though. For granted, I didn't even consider that. But yeah, but for some reason with that one, you only need to hit the first switch and you're good. There's those nice little cyber sections to pretty much just unlock doors or access certain aspects, things. It's a cool little section there. Narc opting to take the normal cycle, not going for the nutter strat there, mainly because it's crazy. Trying to meet the cycle there, I don't even go for it myself because I don't quite know how to go about it.
So what I can tell,
definitely safer.
Observing it has to do with the damage boost off of the electricity, because they get the reverse damage boost off of the first thing of electricity, and I think that kind of puts you in line to try it. But I think if anything still goes wrong, you're kind of
Yep, and that's why I'm too scared to try it right now. One day maybe. But both runners getting through so far, still maintaining good pace, not losing any real time between each other from what I can make out. Now, I did mention about scary cycles. This is probably one of the scariest ones in the run. You kind of get an idea of where you are at this point. Narc is on pattern for it to just sort of sweep down this gap here, land on there and avoid all those spinny things that they look tight as all hell. But when you get a bit used to it, it's still terrifying. But you get it more often than not when you're used to it.
I don't think we've actually mentioned, I don't know that I've mentioned it at this point with any of the races that I've commentated, but there's actually RNG drops in this game. And I mean, we mean that above and beyond just enemies happening to drop things. A good example is outside of that first cyber room, there's a box off to the right you can destroy. Sometimes you get too small SP, sometimes you get too large, sometimes you get a mix and match. There's a lot of cases where you can get an RNG drop, but there's also a lot of cases where you can force a drop, whether it be a health drop from a certain box because you're under a certain threshold, or later we'll see an enemy that will drop health if you're below or four or less health, basically. So there's kind of like value in knowing where you're going to be dealing with those RNG elements and where you're able to kind of farm those consistent drops.
Very true. I believe from 1.03 version, at least for the PC runners, they also incorporated a force drop for SP as well in certain crates. Basically works exactly the same way as the health ones, except for SP. So you can, knowing these kind of things, at least you can sort of manipulate your SP positioning much more favorably as you go forward. But, I mean, we speak of RNG. Let's see some RNG. The mid-stage boss of Chapter 4, Mechadragon. So Mechadragon's quite an awkward thing here. So there's a couple of random factors that we have to contend with. First is whether he's going to jump into the left or the right, which doesn't sound so bad. But in conjunction with these flying propellers, which are also random where exactly they spawn, sometimes that can get a little awkward. As well as that, he could do one of two different attacks. When he's in the water, he could do the swoop that we saw with Narc just, or he could dive out of the water. Looks like he's going for another swoop. Narc looking good for a 3-rounder. Hopefully I didn't just jinx you, my man. Oh dear.
That's on you.
Yeah, that's on me. He's looking good for a 4-rounder. I'm pushing my luck. Thank God. Alright, Sebrango dealing with his side as well. Getting in the first phase, getting half his health, gives him a good opportunity here to go for 2 rounds. Oh, nice.
Wow.
And that's going to catch it. That's going to catch him up very nicely there. The 2-round Mecha Dragon is not the easiest feat. There's a bit of random factor with, as we say, with a couple of the things with the platforms and everything if they're in the right position. Plus, Mecha Dragon does have a habit of liking to eat damage sometimes. Not exactly sure why he does. But as long as you don't get those kind of interferes and you get at least half his health in the first phase, it gives you at least an opportunity to go for 2. So nicely executed there on Sebrango's side as they both take on the Final Fantasy Crystal and the Warriors of Light.
Yeah, to put in perspective how hard a 2-rounder really is, it always looks promising that you're going to get a 2-rounder pretty much after the majority of your round 1s, because the way that the setup happens and you know the initial 2 positionings, the initial platforms, being full of SP when you start the fight, like it's not unusual to have a strong round 1. It's pairing it with the really good round 2, managing the SP, managing the charge blaster, getting the right platforms, predicting the spawn. Like, there's a laundry list of things that need to go right, and all of a sudden Mini is back on top very slightly.
Indeed, as I say, 2 bursts is a very quick 4 plus. I believe a bit of a quicker crystal fight there puts Sebrango back in pole position, but they are still pretty much with each other, probably only 5 seconds apart realistically. And as soon as I say that, really.
I mean, I'll take half the blame for that because I switched the audio back.
You really need to bar me from commentary. Unfortunate death there, taking a knockback. Unfortunately, with this is Cyber Shadow, those things are just going to happen sometimes. So I mean, it is going to put him behind again, but for now, we're still in the front half of the run. Anything can still happen as it goes forward. So he's definitely not done and out yet. As we go forward, Narc opting to get the E field. As he goes in with the vessel defense system, 6 orbs that need to be destroyed, and then take on the gate. With this fight, it is pretty much all mechanical. So, what I mean is, you could pretty much just follow the exact same pattern every single time. There are a couple of different patterns you can use for the exact same outcome. It's just runners' preference as to what kind of pattern they want to go with. And as long as you execute that pattern, you should be able to get a 1-rounder more times than not. And both do get in the 1-rounder. Narc going with the E field, as we mentioned. Sebrango going for the E field as well, opting for a switch. Having 1 hit of damage on Sebrango's side, so he's going to have a little more risky aspect going through chapter 5, as they're going to be looking for a time save within this chapter. So hopefully we'll see how far they carry it, and hopefully they get it all the way.
I don't know if it was maybe that death making him feel a little bit uneasy after the really strong Mecha Dragon, because I think what he opted to do was take some of that damage head on in lieu of getting away from the reactor and saving that extra hit. So it might be kind of that sense of urgency of what just happened and wanting to make up a little bit of that time and saying, okay, well, I'll take the damage, I'll risk the next chapter and only having the 1-hit buffer. Let's go.
Very true and understandable on that front. So they get the next upgrade, which is the parry. So tap towards a projectile and you can parry it back into the enemies. This becomes a primary source of damage, especially for the boss fights as we progress on. So speaking of those sub-weapons, as we spoke of with the damages that they're taking, they have 3 hit points apiece. When you take 3, it goes goodbye. Now, opting to switch for E-Field will cost you an extra 50, so it is a bit of a risk on your financial position. However, versus the gun, it will give you a much better defensive property going through Chapter 5, as there is quite a number of projectiles that come around. As long as the barrier is open, it will block any projectile fired at it infinitely. And there also is a slight advantage, although it kind of gets negated by the cost of time to use to actually pick it up, but you can actually use it to fire off at the switches that you're looking to get the quick or the skips in this chapter off screen, where with the gun you've actually got to have the switch on screen in order to hit it. But the big advantage is for the secondary skip, primarily, is you can actually hit the switch that you're looking for off screen before the chapter 5 boss. So it does there is some advantage, there is some good advantages. It is just down to runner's preference, whether you want better defensive opportunities or better offensive. Speaking of that skip, Narc is there, and he's activated the switch, saves him going up and around. It's a good 25-second time save there, so he'll be happy as he'll have his running with Alpha right now, or at least we'll have an introductory to Alpha.
Opting to keep the E-field as well, so not going to damage down. Is going to lose a little bit of time from not damaging down here. What he's hoping to gain from that is there's a second skip where you can basically avoid a explosion animation and whatnot and rescuing a ninja after Alpha 2. So is going to attempt to carry this through the next section right before the next boss, basically.
Very true on that. He will have to deal with the mid-stage boss first with the weapon. He does have 2 hits left, and as Narc said, Narc's racing, as Choicer said, he's just gonna. He didn't tank that damage on Alpha. Usually it's because Alpha we usually tank on simply because he will automatically crunch your health down. So by not doing that, it is going to cost him, based on his health, probably about 2 seconds. But the time he's going to save by getting the skip is going to be greater than that. So it's a worthy sacrifice, especially if you've got lower hit pool on your equipment / weaponry.
Yeah, I totally forgot about Alpha 1 when I was stating that. But yes, first we have Alpha 1, which E-field kind of makes this fight different depending on how you want to do it. There's a lot of runners that go for very heavy parry strats on Alpha 1, and the E-field obviously blocks projectiles, so it's not the most productive. Narc basically going with a no parry strat and had a couple kind of like sweet crescent slashes from the E-field that seemed to be timed well, so that looked pretty well choreographed. I'm guessing maybe that's his usual fight pattern that he opts for with that.
I have seen him use parry methods, so it might just be a case of he's playing a more safer method to keep the E-field. I'm not 100% on that though, so I wouldn't quote me on it. I mean, it is a bit of a time sacrifice there with Alpha. So he's not going to get as much benefit for secondary skip, but it's still going to at least get him a good couple of seconds save if he takes it all the way through here. And a good fight on Sebrango's side as well, from what I can make out. I didn't quite catch all the fight, though. Oh, no! The Stalker sniped!
I've never seen that orb go that far. I've seen it go pretty far, but I've never actually seen it follow somebody right to the end.
It doesn't happen very often, I will admit. But it is a very small window that could possibly happen. So unfortunately, he's going to miss out a secondary skip. But now he's got Alpha 2. Comes just a big giant mess on the wall here. And pretty much just dealing damage, getting a couple of parries to knock the projectiles away. The main key thing is when you get to that midpoint of the fight, you don't want to hit his eye straight away because it will lock his eye out for that particular part, and he ends up just taking much longer to deal with. So keeping his eye locked open, causing heavy damage. Nice execution, nicely put forward. So he's pretty much done with the front half of the run. And he'll be getting his next upgrade, which is going to be pretty much the chaotic side of things. We'll bring the run into a chaotic side as Sebrango now dealing with his Alpha. Taking a slight delay there, allowing his sword to drop so he gets the parry damage rather than the sword damage. It's an extra point of damage. Gives him a better opportunity of going for a one-rounder. Oh, he almost had it there. He just closed his eye at the last frame, I would say. But that was very close to the one cycle there. Very nicely executed though on Sebrango's side, so he didn't lose much for that. He'll be out. I'm sure he'll be happy with that. And Narc has the dash in a ball, and this is where the run gets into the second half of things. With the dash, you can just run faster, but you also have this slashing attack, and they are key components in your movement from this point on. Is what makes the run more chaotic. Also, the management of your SP is very vital from this point on. To ensure that you have what you need to be able to execute certain things. One thing that we do take advantage of, though, to help with SP management is if you destroy any enemy or any crate with an SP charge dash, you will get an SP guaranteed drop in return. So using that manipulation to our advantage ensures that we can keep our SP where we want it, where we want it at all times.
Yeah, Cyber Shadow is definitely a game of not only knowing your strats and knowing your backups, but probably even knowing a second backup. But There's a lot of cases where if you get caught all of a sudden red-handed and you're left with no SP, you need to completely change your game plan, and that can happen anywhere, anytime, and it's frightening, really. So if you don't know how to handle that situation, things can continue to go south, and it's probably a big reason we see a lot of death loops in this game as well, is not only the nerves of getting into that cycle and having it happen, but just the fact that sometimes you're left standing there going, I don't know. I don't know.
That lends to its difficulty of the run, because especially as the run gets further, what may seem like a very minor mistake by just like mistiming one little thing could change the aspect of everything else that is going on in the room, and that leads to those moments where you just become unsure of exactly how to approach it at that point. So it's always a good idea to have if you're able to be able to learn multiple different aspects and movement based things dependent on how little bits in the room go, so you can at least recover yourself and not going rapid fire there with a technique known as dash cancelling, being able to cancel out of your slashing, because normally you'd have a delay after each slash connection that you do. By hitting the run button and then the dash straight after, you're able to cancel and basically just chain your dashes in rapid succession. As we now go with Tunnel Cleaner, Chapter 6 boss. Pretty much going to be following the exact pattern here, using the parry damage to score as much as he can. Unfortunately, missed a good amount of that, I'm afraid. But he should hopefully have a good idea of how the fight's going to go, as he knew exactly what attack he was going to get there, uses that to his advantage to then manipulate these bombs right back in. Unfortunately, his eye was closed at the end of theirs. He's just going to have to be a bit cautious. And there we go. Good execution in the end there, not getting through the fight. Doesn't have to worry about a death. Sebrango using a different technique here by manipulating a bomb straight away from the beginning of the fight. And you don't tend to see many runners go for that strategy, but, well, Sebrango did, and he executed that beautifully. Very well done.
Yeah, I remember when there was the Tunnel Cleaner quick kill, and then there was the Tunnel Cleaner quicker kill. And I think we might even be on to like another version of that at this point. But again, there's a couple of scripts, there's a couple of ways that you can do that. If it goes south, it's one of those things that you're then kind of wondering, when's the eye going to open? When am I going to have to parry? And just like that, we're on to Chapter 7, and Chapter 7 is infamously dangerous. It's that point where you're going to try and go fast, you're going to try and put all your skills to use. You don't have your double jump yet, so if you've played the game before, you might be in that headspace where you think that you do. And it's just difficult. You've got these walls that shoot projectiles and have 2 extra turrets that shoot projectiles. You have lots of instant death spikes. Enemies hit hard. There's lots of them. Enemies fire projectiles. It's, yeah.
Yeah, it's brutal. And it's not just the music that makes us think of Streets of Rage when it comes to that. Or at least the rage part specifically. Chapter 7 can kick your backside in an instant, very, very simply. Not to mention that the two doors in the front half of this chapter. First door, not so bad. It can be a hassle though. As we said, there's plenty of bullets flying around. The eye itself could go all over the place. And if you thought that was tough, well, the door number 2 is pretty much the same, except how about fighting over a better spikes with free moving platforms?
No.
Well, you may want to
unfortunately, yes, but no.
Yeah, this was a pain for most runners early doors. Chapter 7 was one of those chapters that I actively was not looking forward to, because I knew I was going to die here so many times when I was in like my first month.
We see SpaceNarc picking up the free SP dispenser. The goal here is going to be carry this basically as long as humanly possible. If we get it to the auto-scroller sections with EXO in the near future, we can cash in and get some extra essence from that and kind of pad our currency for endgame. But right now it's just going to serve the purpose of fueling these dashes and ensuring that we can continue to go fast throughout the duration of the next couple chapters.
Very true, and in this second half, that SP dispenser becomes the most valuable tool that you can obtain. Slowly dispensing, as the name says, SP over time, and it just so happens that it happens in a certain way that certain areas, if you have the SP dispenser, you can save yourself several seconds on. which you just cannot save without it. So it becomes a very useful piece to have. And even if you don't go for the full-out SP dispenser strategies, just having that SP dispenser just gives you far more leniency and controlling of your SP, meaning you don't have to worry about your management just as much. Cyber section number 2 for Narc, dealing with it no problem. And that's just going to give him access to the Dragon Shrine, where the game is going to get him set up for any and all challenges that await. So basically this is where they're going to get their final upgrade apparel, and the Dragon's going to basically power up everything that you currently have. So everything that you have has a secondary property by charging up before using your equipment. So for example, the Shuriken will throw an explosive kunai instead. Your airstrike will give a more explosive trajectory downward strike. Rising fire will raise higher and will fire out more. And instead of jumping once, you can... Sounds so simple, yet that's pretty much the primary thing you want from here, because that allows some nice little manipulation technique with your slashing, with your dash slashes. As another thing, apart from destroying enemies and getting an SP back in return, with double jump, it keeps replenishing that double jump. So as long as you've got the string of enemies to chain through in the air, you can just do it infinitely.
And looking at the Dragon times, Mini was just over 39 minutes, and SpaceNarc was a 38:27. So there's still less than a minute difference between our runners right now. Both very respectable times coming in to get their power-ups. And we had a little high five as they kind of exited and entered the building simultaneously.
Indeed, about 40 seconds may sound like a lot in general, but in Cyber Shadow, that's pretty much like a death apart. One death could easily make that 40 seconds happen. Depends on where it happens, of course, but it's just a thing that just can happen.
Well,
no, please, you don't need to do it just to prove me wrong or right. God's sake.
So, that SP dispenser we were talking about being valuable, that may not have been a punishing death in terms of the checkpoint location, but you're going to see a little bit of a ripple effect of that take place. And if Mini can hold on to it, which the damage is already there, but if Mini can hold on to it for a little bit longer, is at least going to be able to push it a little bit further and get some extra, perks out of it.
Indeed, on that. Unfortunately, although Narc's death is going to cost him that dispenser, luckily that just happened to be one of the ones that is pretty much as close to a checkpoint as you can get. So he's really only lost probably closer to 5 to 10 seconds in comparison to what he could lose. So that death won't hurt too much. He recovered it nicely into his third and final cyber section within the any percent run. And this is to get the power running for Exo. Our good little cybernetic robot mechanical transformer friend.
Gundam.
Because that's as small of a name as I could have thought of on the fly. Outside of Exo. But
we're going to see if Mini is going to be able to hold this here. This is basically one of the scary rooms, dealing with that first, robo-squid? I don't know what we want to call them. As you go up those ledges, it can be a little bit tight. Narc here in the auto-scroller section, where if he had retained the SP dispenser, we would see that extra essence flowing. So we're going to see Mini here get the benefit of padding his currency for the end game. Already has a little bit extra by the looks of things, despite that coming into play. So he's going to have even a little more leeway. Wondering... I don't know what he's going to necessarily spend it on. I'm trying to think if there's anything... Like, we're past the Orbiter. It gives you the normal necessities, but I don't know if there's anything out of the way that he can benefit from. But
it's mostly smaller aspects at this point. He could use it to get the health upgrade after Exo 2, just to save very minor time instead of going out to the menu. He could opt to, at the end, like for example, the end of the boat sequence in Chapter 9. He could, like, when he gets off the boat, he could just use all his SP up and dash like crazy to save several seconds there, and then use the extra 50 to replenish his SP and maybe even pick up the SP dispenser at the same time at that point. So it's more minor aspects at this point for time saves, but there is certain aspects that you could use it for, or maybe even using SP dispenser tactics in like Chapter 9, for example. and without the SP dispenser, and then just replenish your SP at the next checkpoint. So you can save this, like say 4 seconds over a segment, but then spend a second and a half getting your SP back, giving you a little bit of a net profit. So certain manipulations like that they could use it for, or just because they're greedy and they like money.
You know what I would go for, actually, thinking about it now? Post Exo to full heal. Like, normally there's the death or the save and quit to take you up to 5, but that dangerous section coming afterwards, I would totally dump some free money into the full heal there. Why not?
I wouldn't blame him, but yeah, it's not much more of a time saving comparison to a save and exit. But as you say, instead of getting about 2/3 of your health back, you get all your health back. Gives you pretty much an extra hit in that segment, and it is one of the more notorious death cycle rooms in the run. But he's gone through. SP Dispenser also managed to keep his SP topped up, so he's going to be able to save some additional time in this section. That he's dealing with now. We can carry it through here, then he'll be able to get even more money off of Exo Part 2. As you can see on Narc's side, the bike now becomes a mechanical suit, and you go crazy. And looking like he's going to get... Okay, I'm done. I'm not talking anymore. I keep jinxing.
You didn't say it. I knew where you were going.
We know where I was going with it.
That's fine. He's still got 100 more essence than Narc does. More than enough padding. Basically, you call that 2 free buys between now and endgame that you normally wouldn't have. That's a healthy margin for extra padding. Yeah, they're both in the Gundam section like this. The lead, I think, shrunk a little bit during that section because of Mini's keeping of the SP dispenser, but there we go. That one's on me.
So, can we just have no commentary ever?
I'm just gonna put none next to the microphone, and we can just like have some popcorn.
Yeah, especially the race on Saturday. Can we just not have no commentary for that one? I don't want no revenge coming my way.
Not only are we having a race Friday, and we have a race booked for Saturday, but there's potentially a second race on Saturday as well. I know we were talking about the Messiah Kyleberry race as well, potentially happening Saturday morning. I just want to firm up details before I go and put that out fully on all the schedules and whatnot. But that should be a full day. Like, Saturday is going to be 2 Cyber Shadow races, and then Castlemania. Like, it's going to be something. Get your F's in chat for Exo. Oof.
Oh yeah, you did say popcorn. Funny that I do actually have half a bucket of popcorn.
Nice.
I could do that. Thanks for reminding me. I forgot I had that. Alright, so pretty much just half of an Exo 2 apart here. So really, still not much in between each of our runners here. They've been keeping up with each other pretty nicely. So Narc's now going to go forward. Going to take that save and exit there to get that extra bit of health, play a bit safer. As I mentioned, this is probably one of the more notorious death loop cycles that you could end up catching yourself in. So the first part isn't strictly the worst case. First part, just want to just take advantage of the enemy positioning, slash yourself forward, get yourself around, zip by, and get past these laser segments. Manipulation there just to ensure that he takes out the sword blade, just for that extra security. It's mostly this last room, so each runners have their own particular methods and patterning that they follow, but you essentially want to manipulate it perfectly in your own way in order to hit or have the enemies follow a certain pathway so you can hit through and get through. Any slight mistake essentially means you're probably going to get killed.
That was really scary.
Got through, really nice.
Before the big scary room, the one prior, Narc accidentally dropped a dash and had to turn back over a pit of spikes because they were expecting to have the dash jump and whatnot. And that's like obviously the scariest feeling. Sometimes your dash just, I won't want to say it just won't come out, but you kind of need like a little bit of leeway for your character to start dashing before you start jumping and doing other things. So if you like mash them simultaneously, it's definitely possible for you to get a jump without a dash. So that was a little bit scary. Sure we all recognize that feeling.
On more than one occasion, it gets a little annoying, especially towards the end of the run when it happens, and you just all sat there going, well. Sebrango dealing with the notorious Deathloop room. Looking very solid in the way he's manipulated. Squeezed by the enemy, gets through. No Deathlooping here in Chapter 8, so very well executed on both ends. Both also currently holding the SP dispenser, Narc exampling the explosive kunai. One of the few small parts where that is a very useful tool, being able to destroy those barriers without actually hitting the orange switch that you're supposed to hit. So it's always a nice advantage there.
Yeah, both of our runners looking pretty comfortable in this section. It's gonna get a little more intense. Mini just took the first hit there on the SP dispenser, so they're looking like they're gonna come out of Chapter 9 fairly even, with the health remaining on that. Still, anything can happen. We have these big deadly mines in Chapter 9, which do an absolute ton of damage, so you don't want to take a swim.
Yeah, water equals death in this chapter, pretty much. You can survive a mine, but the odds are if you fall in the water, you might get juggled a little bit. So, one of the shorter chapters in the run. Certainly not an easy one at that. He's dealing with these lockout rooms here. Two force fights that you have to contend with before you can get out. You do have to be a little careful, especially in that second one, because the turret could just pip you with a little bullet, knock you into the flame barrier, and putting you right back to the previous checkpoint. And that one I know is roughly a 40-second loss, if that was to have happened. But on Narc's side, no problem there. Sebrango is almost clear, almost done with his Chapter 8, and he'll be following suit and entering Chapter 9 in a bit. A little bit of a knockdown there for Narc. Looking to recover, getting a little juggled there. Oh, snipe. Green guy at the top says no.
That section can get a little bit muddy. There's like multiple enemies, there's projectiles. If you land on top of these little shooters the wrong way, like if you touch one of those corners, you do get electrified. Basically, the second that climb goes wrong and you're dealing with the green propeller guy, it gets a little messy.
He's managed to recover it on the second time through, so that'll do him as he'll be approaching the boat. So this boat is an auto-scroller of its own again, so this is pretty much the last auto-scroller of the run. There are going to be a bunch of enemies that are going to come flying in these stars in the background. So whichever direction they go, that's the direction they're going to enter. But fortunately, we know that it's the same pattern every time you do the boat. So as long as you know how many enemies come in, then you have the crates that open up. You could easily maneuver yourself into a wave, so you can just pretty much clear it out. Generally using the air slashing, just it's the more quicker, effective manner to take everything out in the air. But yeah, gotta be a little careful, because if you end up firing off a little soon, you may connect with the enemy, but it's what's known as a full extend, and you don't get the full connection of it, and you lose the double jump getting back out, and you could end up falling off the boat as a result. And well, that's a very painful thing, especially when it's an auto-scroller. There's also a random factor at the end, which some of us are starting to believe might have something to do with the final enemy of this boat, which can determine whether you get a short boat or a long boat. Depends on which one you get. You could lose 10 seconds as a result. Unfortunate bit of RNG, but well, at least there's an RNG element to it. There could be a manipulation, but we haven't quite figured it out yet, or at least to an exact science.
Ooh.
Not got quick boat, so he's going to be happy. Entering Chapter 10.
Shoutouts to Awesome Antelope and Level Up Leo in chat that were chanting out Longboat, which sounds a little counterproductive, but basically the way it works is you chant the opposite of what you want. So they were wishing Longboat on SpaceNarc, and he got the short boat as intended.
Well, if that's true, no girlfriend. Enough of my personal life. Sorry. So, opening Chapter 10. Chapter 10 does not mess about. You go straight into Combinatron. Pretty much, you just want to beat the living hell out of him. Although you want to be a little cautious at the start of the fight. You want to sort of manipulate his health in a way that you just about leave over half his health by the time he does his secondary action. This will ensure that he uses an offensive attack instead of his healing phase. If he goes into healing, it becomes a very awkward fight to get because he will just constantly heal and heal and heal. And at that point, most runners tend to just accept that it's just not going to happen and will take a death automatically. Narc managed to get there just before the health phase hit.
So I see that right? Did Mini get short boat too? I think Mini got short boat.
Nice. I unfortunately missed it, but I'd say that'd be good if he did.
I'm happiest when both runners get the same RNG because then it's at least fair.
I agree. And he has his combination fight going in.
Oh no!
And there is the healing phase, and Sebrango opt in there. As I mentioned, rather than trying to manipulate and battle him out, which you can do, just opt in to say, sod it, we'll reset the fight and go again. So unfortunately going to take a time loss as a result of that. One of the things that you try and do is you can stand in a particular position, so when you jump vertically, you can parry 2 of the missiles without them actually connecting with you. It's a tight gap, but it is possible. Get in the refight very nicely. So he'll be able to go and advance on to the primary aspect of Chapter 10 as Narc is pretty much approaching the end of the bulk of Chapter 10, which will lead to a boss that'll be coming up after the room he is in the form of Spider Rail. And Spider Rail's a little bit fun.
Going with the danger strats here. Okay, so this room is like unimaginably dangerous. I'll just say that because we're getting into Spider Rail and we're going to want to explain that. But that room is dangerous more so than you would ever think. So to go for that parry strats was great.
Indeed. So entering Spider Rail, one of the key factors that you want to go for here, you can manipulate his big core eye, which is where you're dealing the damage. Whereas at such a point at the halfway point of the fight, you're actually able to lock it out. This is achieved with a combination of overall damage in conjunction with the timing of your strikes. If you can pretty much hit the eye as soon as it opens within the first part of the fight, you can force a lockout, and that's where you can score the heavy damage. Unfortunately, Narc not able to get the lockout, so unfortunately Spider-Rail's going to go on for a bit longer, but keeps himself alive and gets through. So that'll do him nicely as he will approach probably the personification of no mistake. You have no problem. Any mistake, welcome to hell. As we go for the climb. So that's pretty much what the climb is. As long as you do it without any mistakes, you're okay. It's not terrible. It's okay. Literally a split-second mistake, and you get mauled by all of the enemies that are here on screen. So every runner has their own different way and approach of manipulation. Narc unfortunately missing what he was after, but he's opted to reset the room. It's a smart decision to make, especially when you fall down there, because that resets everything back and you can go back to doing your manipulation and cycle as best as you would traditionally, rather than allowing yourself to get mauled over. Second time out, though, Narc gets his climb. Basically, let's just say he got it perfectly, because in all fairness, he did. I've seen that method a number of times and he got it perfectly. Sebrango did get the lockout on Spider Rail, so he's going to get a quicker Spider Rail fight. So he isn't far off behind Narc currently. But Narc is about to approach the final set of bosses, so this is a bit of a akin to Ninja Gaiden from back in the day. There's 3 bosses, or 3 phases overall. You need to take them all down in 1 life meter. Otherwise, take a death, restart at Apparator. So Apparator is pretty much using your dash slashing to its full potential. Just keep going back and forth with him, and it just so happens to melt Apparator's health.
And we stole his
nice
lunch
start
money.
There. Oh, Sebrango taking a bit of a fall there, unfortunately, on the climb, and it can happen. I mean, the climb is one of the more frustrating and nasty sections to deal with, especially this late in the run. Narc on to phase 2 with Apparator, with Progenitor now, sorry, the big bad of this game. Using Rising Fire techniques to score heavy damage in the central core, and after a short period of time he will close his shell off, so you'd be forced to knock it back open. Gets through that nicely as we go into the final fight of the run. Progenitor 3 orbs that are on his body. He takes damage on his main body in the center, but the 3 orbs hold different properties that can be used in the fight. The blue sphere gives you a defensive shield, red sphere gives you a slashing projectile, and the one that he hasn't opened would give you some platforms on the floor. However, we can actually use this to pogo off and then cannon ourselves over, and if timed correctly, it allows you to score at least 3 strikes a time, being able to rip through its health much quicker. So he's using that to his advantage here.
I feel like I have to appreciate the fact that we use the platform making pouch as a platform.
Basically. We won't use it for the intended platforms, but we'll use it as a platform nevertheless.
Exactly. Free G to SpaceNarc.
Narc is done, so that is basically GG for him. He's still got a little bit to do to finish the run, but as long as he doesn't get himself caught up in a soft lock, which can happen right at the very end of this run, it's not a random factor, it's something that can be triggered by yourself. And as long as you don't open 2 switches at the same time, you're good. But with that being said, and the struggle that Sebrango had with the climb, as long as Narc doesn't soft lock, we have our winner. But we'll wait until the final bell is called. So Sebrango now going on to Apparator. Oh, well, I think there might have been a bit of a dash input error there. Very rare it can happen, at least on this fight, but it can happen. And he almost fell off the edge there. Using Ride and Fight to his... Wow.
Nice parries.
That was a nice recovery. Using the parrying in mid-air to destroy him there. Not many people go for that if they make that kind of mistake, or if that kind of mistake happens to them at the beginning of the fight. But that's a good example of knowing how to approach the fight in a whole round past this. So he had that back up beautiful. Alright, so continuing on into the secondary phase there for Sebrango. As Narc finishing up. 4 switches are open, and this is going to be good. So that is GG on Narc's side. With I'm not exactly sure. I didn't look at the time at the time, but it's a low 59.
Yeah, it was
very
a 59.22.
Sub 1 hour, not easy.
59.22 race time, GG time. On our timer, it was like a second beforehand. We know it takes a second to reach that .done button. And of course, let's get some audio over here for Mini for this final fight.
And that's a nice finish there. So Sebrango is done as well. Essentially, just getting to the end. As I mentioned, hopefully he doesn't hit himself in the soft lock. Unfortunately, well, he shouldn't be able to because he doesn't have any SP. But the idea of it is when you get to the bottom floor where you're opening the case for the master, there's 4 switches. If you happen to open up 2 switches at the exact same time, it registers one, but it doesn't register the other. But it also does not allow you to hit that one again. So the master just stays locked in forever. Not something you want to have happen right at the end of your run, and we see on Narc's end there, ending with only 3 deaths. Very impressive there. This run will more than likely have some deaths in it. Having as low as 3 is a very impressive count.
Honestly, like, this race could have gone either way. Big GG to both racers. I know it's probably going to be a little bit of heartbreak to come out on the losing end of this. I mean, nobody wants to come in second, but it was an amazing race nonetheless. It had some really great moments. It had some really exciting potential comebacks, and it was just start to finish really good. Indeed, and in terms of the whole tournament, what finding impressive as well is the progression of the runners as a whole. Each of the, as there have been so many PBs as have been happening in the practice league up tournament, so much to the point that the 4 runners that had the slight edge starting at round 2, getting the buys in for being the top 4 seeds, 2 of them are now into the second chance bracket. That just shows the level of skill that everyone has progressed on as well. So very impressive indeed. And Sebrango wins up with a time not to show just over 1 hour 1. And Cyber Shadow being Cyber Shadow, deaths are just going to happen, and that can happen to the best of us. So get your GGs there, and congrats on both runners' side. We'll look to hopefully bring them in and see if they want to do a little bit of an inty. Yeah, definitely. All right, let's get them in here. GG to you both. Congratulations on your finish. It was a tight race. We were just saying to everybody that it really had its moments. SpaceNarc, we'll start with you since you finished first tonight. How did you feel kind of start to finish about your race? Was there anything that really stood out as something great? Was there anything that felt a little bit rocky?
the start, I definitely had like race nerves going on. I was making little mistakes, and it was just like getting to me for a bit. And it's like I kind of went in and out of that. I'd like make little mistakes, then I'd get my bearings again, be fine. Then Mecha Dragon happened, and it went back the other way. And it was like that literally for the whole race. Like I thought I was getting further and further behind.
Now you can blame that Mecha Dragon on Turkey.
Okay.
Because he prematurely called the 3 cycle, and then we saw you got stranded with the 1 health, waiting for that 4th cycle. So that's on him.
You know what? We'll just be safe, and I'll say to both of you, if something happened to you that you deemed really bad, that would not normally happen, just blame it on me. It's a good chance it was me. I've jinxed so many times in this. I really do not like it, but it is what it is. But speaking on the Mecha Dragon fights, if I bring Sebrango in, the first runner I believe so far in this tournament to pull off the 2-round Mecha Dragon fight. I'm going to say you're probably very chuffed with yourself on that front.
Yeah, and I got a gold split, so Mecha Dragon on my side was really good. I had some up and downs during the race. I missed the laser skip, and I rushed it after, so I probably was behind since chapter 2. Then Mecha Dragon went well, so I was all excited, and I lost the shield on chapter 5 for the 2 skips, so I was a little worried. But Spider Rail is the first time that I'm doing it as fast, so I was like, okay, I don't have to just the climb, and that's it. I have the timer, he's not done yet. It was one of the worst climb I think that I had in a long time.
Yeah, that's the climb in a nutshell. It can be a right nightmare. But I mean, especially with that 2-rounder. If you get a chance to watch this back, you'll find, I say from that point, you pulled it back to the point that there was about 5 seconds between you after the crystal segment. So it was super close. Very impressive stuff for sure.
Yeah, really. I was excited because we saw the Mecha Dragon fight, and then you were right on SpaceNarc's heels again. Like going into the room, going into the shrine, and destroying the barrier around it, like seconds apart. And it was that kind of culminating moment of those first few bumps when it took everyone to get settled. All of a sudden, we're completely moot, and we were right back to start again post Mecha Dragon. And it was like, all right, back in the driver's seat. Let's see what happens. I totally understand the climb. Once it goes south, it can really go south. So, I mean, don't feel bad that happens to the best of us, I'm sure.
Definitely. Definitely. Well, with that being said, I believe in terms of how the brackets are going to go, Sebrango, you're dropping down to the second chance. I believe you'll be matching up with Norimaki SR. And Narc, you get to advance on to the winner's side, and you'll be awaiting the winner of, I believe, myself and DJ.
That's correct.
So that'll be fun. I mean, if I can make it through, then we can have like our, I don't know, 20th race by now, probably.
Yeah.
Just to add on to that. But no, great showing off for both of you. And with that being said, I guess any last words anyone would like to put out there?
GG MiniSebrango.
Yeah, GG. I will look at the race, and maybe I'll have nerve just looking at it, even if I know the result at the end.
Yeah, same here.
Of course, be sure to follow our runners. I hit everyone up with the link in the chat there for you guys. Be sure to follow these guys. They're dedicating their time to come out here and participate in the tournament, and so we greatly appreciate that. Be sure to follow my co-commentator, Turkey. Of course, has been my co-pilot for a lot of these races, and it's always great to have you here to bounce things off of, so I greatly appreciate that as well.
I try to do what I can for the things I truly believe in. I'll be fair. I mean, I say when I get addicted to something, I get addicted.
Me too.
But yeah, I would suggest only follow me if you want me to curse you, because that seems to be my thing at the moment. So of course, I'm all for the lol. And with the exception of that, we do have more races coming up. I thought it was tomorrow. It turns out it's Friday. Sorry, Friday 21st, 3 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Atlantic. 2C plus in the second chance bracket to match up with 505. And following with myself versus DJ on Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Atlantic. And as Strider mentioned, there may be another race going on for the opening of round 3. But until that is fully set in, we won't obviously state that as a main. But we've got at least 2 more races going in. And of course, as I've always said, be sure to follow Strider as well if you want to continue watching the remainder of the tournament and what goes on. Plus other things that he produces out there. As he's got mentioned, you've got an event after, not long after the race on Saturday with Castlevania. So if you're a big fan of the old classics there, then be sure to stick around and watch that. And I believe with that, we should be all good. So Strider, I'll leave you to close us out. And I will just say on my side, have a good night and take care.
Awesome. Thank you all. Have a good night all, and good night to our racers. See you guys in the next round.
Good night, everyone.